What I wanted to start out with was asking everybody a question, and if you want to participate and show by a raising your hands, how many of you have woken up wondering how you are living a life that you don't recognize? That's a lot. Wondering how much. Now, how many of you, even in this life that you're living right now, find yourself compromising yourself, whether it be for a job, a relationship, friendships, maybe even your own family? How many feel like that they compromise themselves?
What do you mean by compromising?
Compromising, like where you're doing something that to your core you know isn't really aligned with who you are, just to be able to keep the peace or allow things to move around the way that it's moving right now for you. Yeah. Does that make sense? Or food on the table, whatever it is, whatever to keep your life the way that it is right now. How many people are compromising themselves to do that? There's a question for that, right? So here's the thing. I'm going to give you a little backstory of who I am so you get an idea of why these types of conversations are important to me, right? I was born in Sao Paulo, Brazil, right? And they figured for about the first 6 years of my life, I was in an orphanage, right? And in this orphanage, I lived in a perpetual state of fear, right? And if you understand what fear does, what it makes you hyper alert to the outside world. And that's how I determined like who I was. And so in this orphanage, I was taught to be afraid of everything. It's in Sao Paulo, Brazil. They have a lot of rabies with the animals that run around. And then also, I only had one meal a day. I was malnutrition. And so on top of that, I was filled with parasites, right? So the little bit of food I got, they got the nutrition for that. So eventually I was adopted at the age of 6, right? And I had that distended belly like people talk about. And I spent the first 3 months in and out of the hospital getting cleaned up and getting cleansed from all these parasites. State of fear, right? I moved from the metropolis of Sao Paulo, Brazil to the tundra of Fargo, North Dakota in the middle of winter. So you can imagine there's snow everywhere, on the streets, on the houses, in the trees, everywhere. It was just all white, including the people. And so there's a lot of shocks at such a young age in my life of uncertainty and things that were going on in my life, right? And so what happened and what I realized as an older person is that I was really trying to figure out who I am, which is so appropriate to weigh, right? Who am I? By looking in the outside world and trying to gather where I fit in. Does that make sense? And it's very appropriate with the flight, fight, or freeze responses for that to be like that, right? And so, this is the whole thing. This is why, because I felt so lost and I've always felt out of place, this is why this conversation is so important to me, because eventually I got to a point where I feel comfortable with who I am, even in my expansion and growing and evolution of self. Does that make sense? And that's what I want to share with you. And so, the thing that I want to introduce into your guys' thoughts, this concept is of the noise, right? And the noise, what that is like all the outside influences that we have that influence the way we feel like we should be or who we are inside. Does that make sense? All right. So with the noise, the interesting part is if you understand how when you're inside your mom's womb, I forgot the whole word for that, but when you're inside your mom's womb and you're being put together and created, even the outside environment outside that your mother is going through is also affecting your growth and your development. You understand that? Because you're being pumped with cortisol if she's scared, adrenaline if she's in a hurry, or endorphins if she's happy, right? And so you're getting fed this information as you're developing and your brain grows and your body grows, right? So that is also noise that affects how you see yourself on the inside. Does that You understand that? All right. So one of the biggest obstacles for you discovering who you are is the noise. All right. Because inside we have a voice, a direction. We were born with something to do on this planet. And if we ever sit quietly, we know that that exists. But we have all these distractions outside of us that get this here. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to give you a tool to help you quiet the noise and be able to listen to your inner voice that's really speaking loudly, but it has a lot to compete with. Does that make sense? So understanding the noise. Okay, so here we go. Yeah. I want you to make sure you know the noise. Good job for turning that down. So there's three aspects of what creates us as human beings, right? And in a lot of religious texts, they call it the mind, the body, and the soul. Everybody familiar with that? The mind, body, and soul, right? Now, if you're not very religious, you can also just call it thought, matter, and energy, right? Same thing, mind, body, soul, thought, matter, energy. So there are three schools of thought. And my wife and I have worked together to coin this what we call the science of spirituality, which this is the body of what it is, right? And there's three schools of thought that help us to understand the mind, body, or soul, thought, matter, and energy, right? So with the body is all about everything physical in the material world. Does that make sense? And that is the science is what helps us understand and categorize and help us explain what the material world is all about. So what does that mean? The physical world. So we have our five senses that anytime something out here happens to us in the world, our five senses picks it up and then it's interpreted inside of our body and there's chemical reactions, feelings that happen inside of us to help us determine and pick up data on what we should do. Does that make sense? Everybody aware of that? Feelings are actual physical things and sensations that happen in your body. And science does a very good job of categorizing it and naming it. Is that understood? All right, so then we move on to the mind. Now, the mind, the tricky mind, is explained with psychology, right? And what that is the conceptualization of what is happening to you physically. Does that make sense? I like to say it's the stories we tell ourselves about these physical sensations that we feel in our body. Does that make sense? And then the key is, where did we get these stories? Right? Where do we get these stories? And that now brings us to the soul, or what I like to call the energy, and that's what spirituality explains. Different religions, even science explains, like, energy never dies. They say the soul never dies, it just transmutes. And so what happens is with the energy, you're expelling this energy outside into the world, depending on how you feel and how you think. Does that make sense? How you feel and how you think, and you create the world around you with that. Or really, I like to say you just attract the world around you that you're spewing out by the way you think and feel. How we're made and where these ideas come from. These are belief systems, these stories that we tell about what happens to us in the physical world, right? And so the obvious ones is our families. Depending on how our families treat us, if we're raised in a very abusive home or a very loving home, very different scenarios and very different stories about how the world is to us. Is that right? And so me being in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and being in an orphanage, for example, I had a lot of fear and I felt like it was me against the world. And that's how I viewed everything. Whenever I looked out into the world, I looked at it like, okay, it's just me here and I have no help and I have to figure out how to do this on my own. You know, abandonment issues and all those things. And that was ingrained in me at a very young age. And when things happened to me, that's the lens that I looked at life with. Does that make sense? All right. So gotta think for a second. Okay. So when you think about the family aspect, that's pretty easy to see. But then when you think about your friends, they influence the way that you act too. And also when you think about, media, and even nowadays, which is a lot more than back in our day. I'm 48, so we just had TV and radio, right? Now you got TV, radio, internet, social media, streaming all day long, feeding you information on who you are and how you're supposed to be. And that is even more noise that gets in the way of you being able to listen to your inner self. Does that make sense? All right. So to give an example of from a perception where I came from, I, being melanated, adopted to Fargo, North Dakota by German Americans. And in the 80s, you could imagine I was the only speck of pepper in a sea of salt. And trying to figure out how I fit in this world, a lot of the information I got was from TV, right? And if you knew about TV back in the day, a lot of it was Bill Cosby, but the biggest show running was Cops. Cops, and all you see them doing is chasing down people that look like me or people in the trailer park, right? Right, the trailer park, and then here's when I really put the big picture together, and it kind of blew my mind when I thought about, because I became a criminal in the majority of my adult life. I was a criminal, and this is how it was put together. So my mom did the best she could to teach me about the civil rights movement and slavery, and what that did is all that did for me was tell me, oh, those people aren't going to give you a chance. You got to work harder. You got to be smarter. You got to be nicer. You got to be meaner. You got to be better than everybody else around you in order to make it, right? But they're not going to give you a chance. And you see how they kept your people down all this time, right? So then when so beautiful when I think about it. So then when I'm watching TV and I'm like, oh, those people like me being chased by the cops. And then hip hop came out, right? The 80s hip hop. First it was hip hop, and then it came out to gangster rap, and it's like, bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks. Or get that dope, get that money. You know what I mean? Slang that, and you ain't shit unless you're this way and that way. And people that were doing it were melanated like me. So what do you think I learned to be? When I didn't have any other people around me that looked like me, I was learning it from media. And that's how important it is to understand how the noise can affect your own development. Because my inner voice was saying something different. Does that make sense? It was really saying something different. But man, that noise from the outside world was pretty loud. And on top of that, people would give me pats on the back that yatta boy for being what I was. Does that make sense? All right. So it's very important to understand how that stuff can really affect your development as a human being. Now, the other thing is when you finally, the other thing is that I wanted to talk about too is when I finally got to that point where I listened to my voice and I wanted to change, but all this programming was in my mind to be a certain way, and I felt like I was a broken being, right? And we live in Ashland, and that's kind of like the epitome of Ashland. You come to Ashland to heal, and here's the part that really sometimes you're like a hamster on a hamster wheel, and I like to call it getting stuck on the trauma train. And you got to jump off the trauma train, because like we were speaking about earlier, whatever you speak forth from your mouth is what becomes your reality. And it's all part of the creation of who you are. When you continue to speak things over and over again and you relive it, this world is created of vibration. It's created through vibration. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word is with God, and the Word was God. And there it was. And the utterance of creation, Om. So what is it that we creators are spewing forth from our lips and wondering why we're living this life that we're living? And so I invite you guys to please jump off that trauma train. Just start living the life you want to live instead of talking about how you got to fix everything to get there. Does that make sense? All right. So what I'd like to do now is give you guys a tool that Maeve and I came up with. Is called the RID wave, right? And this RID wave is a tool that you'll be able to use to help you recognize, right? Recognize the feelings and the sensations that are going on in your body when an event happens out here. Recognize what's going on with your body. Identify the stories that you're telling yourself about what's going on physically in your body. And then once you identify what's going on, then you have an opportunity to decide to take a different route. Does that make sense? Instead of just shooting off. Here's the thing about it. It's so simple. It really is simple. It's a simple concept, right? You recognize, you identify, and then you decide to do something. You can do the same thing you always done, or you can do something different. And whatever you decide to do is going to take you in whatever course that you're going to go. So here's the trick to all this, is you have to be able to be the conscious observer. Does that make sense? That awareness, when you are living your life and you're aware, like I'm speaking to you right now, but at the same time, I'm aware of myself and how I am, and that's how I'm able to, be able to look around and see what's going on as I speak. You get what I mean? And we do that in our lives all the time. And even being aware, once you do act in a way that you don't want to act, being able to repair, being able to look back and be like, you know what? I don't even like the results. What is it that I did that I could make things different next time? Because the only thing you can change is yourself, right? So with the rid wave, it's simple. You recognize the sensations. You recognize if your body's getting hot. You recognize what kind of hormones are you actually kicking out. Are these hormones that you want to kick out? Is this the way that you want to feel? And sometimes at the beginning, you're just going to feel the way you feel because it's programmed for you to feel that way. Does that make sense? At the beginning, it's always going to be that way where you feel, until you start changing the program. And to do that, you have to identify the stories that you tell about yourself and tell about what's going on around you. And if you guys know Joe Dispenza, he talks about this, right? Where your mind, you have a feeling inside of your body, and then it shoots up to your brain, and your brain gives you thoughts to validate those feelings. And then all of a sudden you feel even more so the way that you feel, and it shoots up to your head and gives you more stories to validate the way that you feel. So at this point, this is where you can be aware of these thoughts that are going on, right? So that you can decide to start thinking something different and doing something different and stepping back. Does that make sense? And that right there will start changing your trajectory in life. Simple. So do you guys want to, someone want to go ahead and give me a recap on that red wave so you can use it at home? Recognize? What are you recognizing?
The thoughts and the sensations in your body.
The sensations in your body. The sensation. Yep. And then identify about the sensations that you're having in your body. And why are you doing that?
We recognize the pattern, right? If the pattern it's been there.
Yep.
And then you're getting a little space so you can change it, right?
Yep. And so what's the D? Decide. Yeah, decide to do something different. Decide to do something different, because you're still going to feel that way. You're still going to have those thoughts. But the part that starts to pivot the direction of your life is when you decide to do something different. Now, with the whole trauma train thing, right? When we do all this healing and all this work and all this breathing and meditating, all that stuff because of all the trauma that we have, do you know what it all ends up to be? So we just let it fucking go. Yeah. It's all that work just to let it go. You know what I mean? So if we could just get like Elsa and let it go sooner, we can change our life a lot better, a lot quicker. Does that make sense? All right. So with all this, right, with the whole rid wave, with the whole trauma train, with the whole understanding that the majority of who you are isn't even your decision for the most part. It's all the influences around you. Tonight, though, you can make a decision to start doing something different. Start being more aware, right? That awareness. Start thinking about, is the way that I am right now really the way that I want to be? And in every moment, in every decision, you have an opportunity to recognize, identify, and decide. Does that make sense? All right, let's go out there and get it.
As we build in our business, there's one thing that we found that everybody needs, and that is capital. And in order to get capital, we have to understand our own financial literacy. So Maeve and I have joined this group in this company that will help you understand your financial literacy, be able to give you some different ways where you could gain capital. And if you're interested in that, and whether it's for business or for personal, you're trying to build your life and you need finances to do so, be sure to hit me up at 612-750-3948 and text finances. 612-750-3948 and text finances.
So is that?
I recognize.
So is that a science of spirituality right there, sir?
Yes, that's. This is just.
I'm kicking off the question.
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, so this is one of the tools that we use in the science of spirituality. It goes. We have a limited time, so the science of spirituality is a lot deep. We can get real deep with it. You know what I mean? We can get real deep with it. There's a lot more science to it. Kasia talks about that all the time. There's a lot more, what are these hormones doing to your body, how your brain is developed. I love to be able to get into all that stuff, but we had just a limited amount of time to do it. So this is very, very summarized version of any other time this is presented. Go ahead.
Will you take us through a brief exercise or we can practice the
The red wave?
visualization?
Okay. Close your eyes.
I thought you were going to.
Touch your heart and your... No, I'm just playing. All right, so no, for real, just close your eyes. And I want you, in your very near past, I want you to think about the last uncomfortable conversation that you had with somebody. Is that a second ago?
Yeah.
Just think about that. Look at yourself in this conversation. And when it started getting uncomfortable, whatever that person said, just look at their face. Just watch the words come out of their mouth and feel what it felt like for it to hit your body. What was going on in your body at the time? Did you feel flushed? Did you retract a little bit? Did you want to snap out? Did you feel shrunken up? Or did you puff up? What was going on in your body? Did your stomach tighten? Did your hands get sweaty? Did you ball up in a fist? What was the physical sensations that you felt? Do you recognize those physical sensations? Now, I want you to, while feeling those sensations, think about the thoughts that were flooding your mind as you were hearing those. Did you get defensive? Did you think about, oh my God, I knew this was going to happen? I knew you were going to say that. Why do you always say that? You never understand what I'm talking about. You don't think of what was going on through your head. What story were you telling as that person was saying what they were saying? What were you telling yourself in your head? That's you identifying these patternistic stories that you tell yourself because you were feeling a certain way. Now, at this moment, when you look at the conversation and how it went, and the way that you felt about the conversation, do you want to feel that way about the conversation? Is it where you want to be? Is it the frequency you want to be vibrating at in this conversation? This is where you get to decide how you're going to continue to act, continue to think, continue to engage in these interactions. This right now is where you can anchor it in and decide whether or not you're going to continue this or do something different. All right? And anytime you want to come back. There it is. Just all right, so does anybody want to share what it felt like? What it was like? Yeah, go ahead.
I want to say most of my stuff that I experienced goes back to a root feeling I had as fear.
100%.
And I'm like, man, everything goes back to the same ball run.
Yeah.
Labeling all these different scenarios, all these different things. It's just fear.
It evolves.
Yeah.
It morphs.
Yeah.
And usually you're probably this high when it but it gets so sophisticated
Right.
in how it protects itself. Does that make sense? But it's always the same old shit. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean that in a, what do they say? There's only 7 core wounds that we have. Is that right? The 7 core wounds: abandonment, rejection. You know, I don't even know them all. But how old? I'm 48 years old, and I only have 7 core wounds that I just keep playing over and over again. Come on.
Yeah, because that's all the story, right?
It's all the story.
There's a story to tell about the feeling.
Yeah.
And we sit with the feeling and just let it be there, perfect there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a feeling.
It's just a feeling.
Just watch the thoughts come and go because they don't stay. They land and take off.
Yeah. They say it's called the refractory period, right? You're supposed to have a refractory period about the way you feel about things. And then it becomes a problem if you just continue to feel it and feel it and feel it. But you should be able to have it go through your body and go after a while and be like, all right, that was good. Shake it off.
What about those times when, maybe you've had this happen, I'm sure you have, where you're in a scenario and you go out and something happens and your level of intensity of the emotion is 10 times higher than it actually is for your situation. And you know that logically, but you can't place why that happened.
Yeah.
And then you're dealing with this stress for days.
Yeah.
And you're processing through breath work, and then it dissipates, and then when that scenario comes back, it doesn't happen again.
As big.
What do you call those?
Yeah. I mean, it's
Happen, right?
well, yeah. It's in your body, right? You have something that goes on in you and you haven't really processed it. If you think of our body holding energy, energy never dies. So then when you're doing the breath work, you're transmuting energy, right? You're holding it in your field. You got to let it go. You know, and there's a lot to it because your brain is physically wired to be a certain way and to react a certain way and act a certain way. And it takes a lot of, like we were talking earlier, right? Your brain, in order to conserve energy, automates a lot of stuff that happens. Automates it. So in order for you to change it, there's either hypnotism, meditation, or repetition, right? And so then you just got to continually be that. You know what I realize? Everything that we do here is all about consciousness. That's all it is. It's about consciousness. How conscious are you about what's going on in your life? And what are you doing with it? You know, it's all about consciousness. That's all it is. The greater consciousness, your personal consciousness, group consciousness. It's all about consciousness. It's all the work that we ever do. And what happens is after a while, we become so automatic in the life that we're living that sometimes we drop back into those already programmed thoughts that are in our head. We jump back onto the neural networks that we want to get rid of. Does that make sense? Oh yeah, that too. People think it's dope that people are chemically addicted. It's not. It's not even the dope. It's the shit that comes with the dope. There's so many people that I work with that they're not even using dope or anything, but they're still living the drama. And it amazes me. But
because it's like what keeps the identity alive.
And it's what your body knows.
And you're afraid to let it go or let it die. Because if you let it die, when you become, oh no.
Well,
If I let this go.
and to be honest with you, I think it's even simpler than that. I think it's that your body is used to having a certain chemical cocktail running, and then when it's not running, your body sends a message like, "Hey, man, what happened to my cortisol? It's like noon right now, and it's like I don't have cortisol." And then your mind's like, "Oh, wait a minute, let me start some trouble. What the fuck you looking at?" You know what I mean? You know, I think it's as simple as that. Like it doesn't have to be. Yeah, so it doesn't even have to be that existential about it. It's just like.
Any kind of change is uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Just, it doesn't have to be a positive thing.
It could be negative or positive. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
So when that, like, if you're because you change your pattern, you're afraid of what's going to happen next, so you go back to what you're doing.
100%. 100%. 100%.
I'm aware of what we sort of, I like to kind of listen to other people speak on it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. People are afraid. Even as a matter of survival, if you want to take it to a primal level, as a matter of survival, you got to know your environment and understand your environment. And if you already know how to deal with a certain type of beast, you don't want to have to try to learn. You might lose your life fucking with the saber-toothed tiger. You know what I mean? So you just stay away from it. And that's kind of like, okay, I'll just be a little more hungry than go over there and fuck with that tiger. You get what I mean? Yeah. But yeah. All right. Any other questions? Oh, all right. Thank you. Oh.
What is it you said it's great spirituality?
No, the science of spirituality is what my wife and I came up with, and we coined the science of spirituality because she's very.
Well, tell them about the story about the indigenous peoples in the Amazon, and they saw an airplane.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, it wasn't that. Well, there was a wartime, right? And there's these islands that people never go to. But during the wartime, they're like, okay, we need these islands for strategic. And these people that lived on these islands were pretty kept to themselves and lived in villages and lived a very simple life. And these guys came, and all the military people were giving them candy and all this stuff, right? And leaving them helmets and feeding them food that they've never had before, right? And then when the war was over, they just packed up and left these people here, right? So then these people, what they did is they were like, they created a religion off of these military people. They would take wicker and build these life-size planes and pray to them, and they would paint themselves and make wooden guns like the military people, and they thought that their gods abandoned them. Whoa. And they created a religion based off of these people, right? Because of that. And so when all in all, that technology, them having higher technology, made them feel like they were a god just because they had higher technology. But in reality, we know that they're human beings just like us. You get what I mean? They just developed differently because they were isolated on these islands. Does that make sense? And so it's the same thing with everything that we're doing here. We have that same power within us, but we look at the government or science or whatever as if they're some kind of higher learning than we are, when really all the answers are within us. Our DNA is 14, can hold 14 billion years of information. 14 billion years. You know how old the universe is? Yeah. Do you know how old the universe is? 14 billion years. So we're got the whole world in our hands. We got the whole world. But it's really like that. But because we become that, that's what they say with the whole AI and all that, because we became so dependent on outside sources in order to source outside sources to source ourselves, then we lost a lot of the things that we're able to do. Yeah.
You make people get disconnected from themselves.
Yeah.
They get
Dependent. No.
It makes you think of religion, the Bible, and all those Abrahamic religions, all that shit. It's really like you paint a picture.
I'm just remembering that what we're capable of, we someday can explain with science, or we want to be able to explain it, but you don't have to explain it in the theoretical realm. It's just happening, and that's what we call spirituality. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't understand this logically, but I've experienced it in like some mystical way, and that's what we call spirituality until science explains it, and now we're calling it science.
Yeah.
But it's all the same thing.
Well, it's ancient knowledge with new technology, and because we've gotten so disconnected that now science is able to actually prove us back to the origin.
And that's why we call it the science of spirituality, because I'm more science-based, and my wife was a lot more into the whole spiritual aspect of it. But, and it's kind of funny because we have the masculine and the feminine, right? And I was always, and I went to church and all that my whole life, and I was like, man, this shit was crazy to me. I never connected with it. And they said, if you don't connect, you'll know because you'll feel it. And I never did, and so, but then the science started making sense. And I got into Joe Dispenza, and I was like, oh my God, we are energetic beings. You know why we're energetic beings? It's so fucking simple. A fifth grader could tell you. It's because everything in the universe is made out of an atom. And it has an electron and a proton, a negative and a positive, just like a battery. What's inside of a battery? Energy. And everything has energy. And energy and motion creates an electromagnetic field. Yeah. And it has it around the earth, around us.
Well, the hardest was the message.
Yeah.
It was the first thing created in the mother's womb.
Yeah.
Everything grew out of that.
Yeah. And it turned me from an atheist to a spiritualist with some science to back it up. You know what I mean?
Which Joe Dispenza says science is the unifier.
Yeah.
It's like any race, religion, gender, it eliminates us and it equalizes us.
100%.
All become one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just so to clarify, the grid tool you just taught us
Yeah.
is a way to quiet the noise all around us and our programming.
Yeah. Start listening to yourself because you realize that it's noise. You realize that the chemicals going off in your body is just noise. You realize the story that you're telling yourself about it is noise, because all there is the right now. What do you want to get out of right now? There is nothing else other than the present now. And it's a wave, a red wave, which, if you know the double slit experiment, where there's infinite potential wave that happens. And then when you make a decision, it collapses into the experience that you have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but say it again.
Okay. So everything vibrates. Okay, let me do this. Do you know about the double slit experiment? Okay, so they were trying to figure out if light was a wave or was a particle, right? So what they did is they put two slits and they shot photons of light randomly at these slits. And they went through the slit And then what they did is they looked behind there to see what happened, and it made a wave pattern. And it was all random. And they were like, holy shit, how did that happen? We were randomly throwing photons. And so then what they did is they took a machine and they measured to see what happened on the other side. And when they did that and they came back, it was just random patterns all over the place. You know why? Because that's what they expected to see in the beginning. But the first time it was a wave of potential. You get what I mean? But then because they expected, they were like, how is it a wave? How did it do the wave pattern when it was then it gave them what they wanted. It was random. So they realized yes, so that's the realization they had, is they realized once reality is being observed, the observer affects the outcome of reality.
Okay, so go back to the original waves that you stated.
Oh.
Hey, what's going on? We're going to get back to the interview right after this. If you like what you're hearing and you like the interview that's going on and you want to learn more about us, go ahead and go to thismodernmessage.com, where you can get access to courses, merchandise, and live events that we'll be at. thismodernmessage.com. We'll see you there.
The RID wave, the beauty about it, it's a wave, right? And with that, you have an infinite amount of potentials that could come out in an experience that you have. Yep, it's infinite. Right now, I could pick this up and throw it at you. There's so many things. I could moon you. You know what I mean? There's so many things. Yeah, that could happen right now. So many things, but we already kind of know what's going to happen. So it's whenever you have those experiences, it's the same thing. There's so many different potentials that could happen. But you expect it to happen. When you say in your mind, oh, I knew you were going to say that. I knew it was going to be like this. And then all of a sudden, you're bringing into the forefront the very thing you didn't want.
But when you stop, you're totally present with your sensation.
And you realize that it's going, and you decide to, okay.
So what was it? Recognize sensation, identify thought, and do something different?
Yep, you do, or decide. Maybe you want to do the same thing. Maybe you want that reaction. Maybe you're addicted to the feelings and you want. Yeah. Yeah.
But I also noticed too, with what you're talking about, you go back to your memories you've had in the past, and sometimes people revisit memories and can make them feel a certain way. But after observing enough, you go back and they're just thoughts. The feeling is which means the past has retroactively changed the way you interpret it.
The past is the future.
Yeah. So
there is no.
Somehow in the now, you're affecting simultaneous time. At least that's how I'm looking at it.
It's 100%.
Right? Because in that experiment, they said when they shot those things through, on the other end of reading something, they changed something and it retroactively changed the result.
The result.
It already happened.
Yeah, change the result. Yeah.
They're like, what's this? But they came up with some example in scientific glue, whatever the shit was, some explanation for it. I was like, that didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I thought
but it's conscious observation. That's all that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. If you look at your past, you could look like me. I was adopted, right? And my mom, she's an adult child of an alcoholic. She had all the symptoms, whatever, textbook, right? And I could be like, God, she was so abusive. She beat my ass. She would tell me how I wasn't shit without her. And that's all true. But you know what else she did? I did theater. I played every sport. She took me to Disney World, all those things, which is true too. And it's all in the past. But before I started becoming more conscious, I used to be like, yeah, man, I'm adopted and my parents treated me like shit. Pass me that bubble. And then, like whatever. That's all I looked at. And then as I became more conscious, I was like, holy shit, I'm speaking the very thing that I don't want into my life again. And so then I started changing. And I love my mom. She was awesome. She did a lot for me. I wouldn't be up on here talking. Well, maybe I would, but I wouldn't be able to do it like I do it if it wasn't for all those theater classes that she sent me to. You know what I mean? Something. Yeah. Being naked though. Hey, that's not a banana. Yeah. My pleasure. I hope it was helpful.
You're holding it just as if it were like 50 people. So
Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah. That was good. Yeah.
So yeah, man, you got that. You can do that to 1,000 people, and then everybody will be like, yes.
That's cool. Thank you. That's good to hear. All right. You're not just saying that now. Yeah, that's the way. All right, cool. That's cool.